Okie dokie, artichoke. We are kicking it off for IG Live number 11. 11 of these in a row, 11 weeks in a row. Where are we at? We're almost at 3 months in a row. So we're getting better at this. We are creating a little community every single Friday. It's 3 p.m. for me, wherever you guys are tuning in from. I'm not sure, but when you're dropping in, let me know, 1, what your name is, and 2, where you're tuning in from, so I can give you a little shout out real quick, because that's what we do here. We say hey to anyone that wants to hang out with us for a little bit on Friday. So yeah, we got some good stuff that we're gonna be talking about today. I've been trimming this down to about 5 or 6 highlights for topics that we're gonna go over. So so the highlights for today are going to be the following, because I don't want to bore you with 20 topics that are kind of pointless. So we're going to give you 5, we're going to give you 6. And yeah, that's what we're going to go over today. And you're going to leave this being like, yeah, I got better and it was a fun time. So the highlights for this Friday, IG Live number 11, is going to be the following. And then I'll give you guys the shout outs after I get through this little intro script. I'm going in my head, how do I want to best do this? And I feel like when I'm just shouting out, going over this, I'm going back and forth, right? It's not the smoothest and it kind of interrupts it. So I'll just do that at the very end of this little intro script I got. And then we'll get into it, yeah? Cool. So, so these are going to be the highlights today. We're going to talk about vision. We're going to talk about 5 years out, vision, where we want to be, where I see myself, where we want to be in 5 years from now. Talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about legs, kind of a little leg workouts. We're going to talk about weak points, not feeling good enough. And we're going to wrap it up with 2 more, but really the last one is going to be high value man. What is a high value man? And then the very last one is just going to be silly, because that's what we just like to cut it out at. So yeah, 5 years out, vision, legs, weak point, not feeling good enough, high value man, and a silly one to wrap things up on your lovely Friday, yeah? All right, let's see what we got. Let's see where we got people tuning in from. And we will kick it off, because we're going to have the best Friday ever. And I'm going to help you guys continue to have the best Friday ever. So we've got Elena from Long Beach. See how many we can get through here. We've got Aurora in Montana, Jacqueline from Michigan, Tanuka from New York, Jonathan from Arkansas, I have to scroll down, Michael from Tennessee, Vicky from Wyoming, Natalie, hey Natalie, from H-Town, let's go. We got big Brendan here, hey Brendan, Wendy from Florida, Carrie from Monroeville, PA, let's go. Andrew from Bay Area, Riley from DC, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to get through those, so maybe I'll have to figure that out. But all right, so if you want to drop it right now, maybe I'll do it. Juliana from Washington, DC, Stephen from Florida, and Kiki from Detroit. What is going on, Kiki? All right, so let's get into this for a little bit. So like I said, those are going to be the highlights. We're going to have vision 5 years out from now, leg workouts, weak points, not feeling good enough, what is a high value man, and a silly one to wrap things up. So let's do this. So we don't have a guest with us this time around. Maybe I will have a guest in a few weeks. Maybe we'll turn this into an interview kind of live kind of thing. I think that'd be pretty dope. But in the meantime, you guys are stuck with me. So let's get into it, yeah? So I hope you're having a great Friday, like I said. And let's just do this for 15, 20 minutes and just continue to have the best Friday of your entire life. So first question we're going to go over is about vision, and where do we see ourselves in 5 years, and why do I think that is so important? So let me be your next guest. All right, yeah. Also, if you just want to drop any comments, I'll read those off. Jonathan from Arkansas is checking in. And yeah. Hey, Colin. James from Scotland. All right, let's do it. So this first question is going to be this. Where do you want to be in 5 years? And why is vision so important? So something that I personally do every single day is I started doing this last year. So I've been doing it for probably about like a year's worth of like every single day. I will journal every single day for 10 to 15 minutes or so. And so one thing that I actually recently found out that this is actually called the way that I do it. Like everyone journals differently, right? I guess. The way that I do it is apparently it's called bullet journaling. I just like learned about this. So yeah. Hey Casey. So the way that I journal is bullet journaling. Like that's how I like to journal for like 10 to 15 minutes, and I write the same exact things down every single day, but I make sure that I do it every single day. Because it just helps me like stay on track. It's like my planner kind of thing, if you will. Like I always had a planner in school growing up, like in high school, and in college and everything like that. So that's how I like view my journal basically. Like every single day, it's like my little planner thing that I use. And like whenever I do like big goals, I'll like, I kind of like write down the same goals and write down the same vision of like how I want my life to be like 5 to 10 to 15 years out from now. That's like how I like end my journaling basically. I'll like go back and cross out every single day. Like once I like complete a task that I wanted to do for that year, like that's what I did for all my goals that I had in 2022. That's what I'm doing for my goals that I have in 2023. I'll go back and cross out like every single day that I wrote that down. Like last year, I don't know, I had a bunch, just like running a marathon, competing in a physique show, like financial goals, like business related. And after I completed them, like after I hit that goal and did that task, I went back like every single day. It was like the most fulfilling thing to do, to just like cross out like every single day and be like, yeah, like we wrote this down every single day. This is like what I saw myself completing. This is what I saw myself doing, and we did it. Yeah. So that's how I journal basically. And to answer the question as far as like where do I want to be in 5 years, my vision is, so some of the things that I write down, the specific things, they're sort of like in these buckets, right? They're in these categories. And so the categories are business related, physical related, social, like social media related, and then family. So those are like my 4 little like dimensions in my life that like I kind of create goals from, if that makes sense. So basically 5 years from now, I'm 25 right now, I'll be 30 years old in 5 years. That's kind of like where I'm kind of like making like the goals from, right? So when it comes to my like business related 5 years from now, they're sort of like financial goals. So like, I don't know if it's like necessarily, who cares, appropriate to mention it, but who cares? 5 years from now, like I want to have like a 7-figure business, like 7-figure brand, that I'm like running, right? And so that's like my goal when I'm 30, is to have a business that does almost like 6 figures in revenue per month and 7 figures overall annually. So that's like my goal as far as like business related by the time I'm 30. When it comes to physical, my goal for 5 years out from now when I hit 30 is to be an IFBB pro in men's physique. So I've done 2 physique shows up until this point, and I ultimately, by the time I'm 30, 5 years from now, I want to say that I'm a pro in that sport, because I think that would be pretty freaking cool to do. And so like that's like my ultimate dream, my ultimate goal is just to like get my pro card in men's physique and do a show that I could qualify, I could qualify for a national show, place, top 2 to qualify, and then top 2 to get my card. I think that's still how it works. That's how it worked whenever I did like research back in the day when I was trying to do that. But yeah, that's my physical goal when it comes to 5 years from now, by the time I'm 30. And so those are those 2. And then when it comes to social media, 5 years from now, ultimately I'd like to have an influence of a reach of about 2 million. Like I want to have a 2 million reach by the time I'm 30, right? So I want to have overall like all types of social media outlets, essentially. Like I want that reach to be up to like 2 million, right? So just like growing YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, IG, things like that, just kind of encompassing like Snapchat, Twitter, just growing all types of social media and like that influence up to 2 mil is ultimately what I want to get that up to. And then last but not least is family goals by the time, 5 years out from now, basically. So first, I want to have 2 dogs. I want to have 2 dogs by the time I'm 30. And then ideally, I'd like to have a girlfriend by the time I'm 30. That would be pretty cool. Yeah. So those are my goals when it comes to my vision. I think having a vision literally there's nothing really that more important than having some kind of vision that you see yourself. Like, maybe you're in college, that I used to always get, they ask you these questions when you're so young and you have like no idea how to answer something like this, but like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, like 10 years? Like really taking time to answer that. Like, it's not like you have to tell anyone what your answer is, right? You just need to like know that for yourself. I think that is super important to have some kind of vision where you're going in 5 years, and then sort of like breaking those down into tasks that you can actionably check off the list when it comes to like yearly goals or monthly goals or even like weekly and daily goals that you can like get yourself to how you foresee that vision, like, playing out over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So, and what I personally use to help me like keep on track, basically it's all that, is journaling every single day. And I foresee myself doing that for like the rest of my life. So yes, LinkedIn is where it's at. You got that right, Natalie. Honestly, I'm trying to grow that. And I feel like that's super underrated when it comes to social media. So yeah. But yeah, that's my question. That's my answer to that question as far as like vision, why it's important, and where I personally see myself in 5 years. That's my big checklist, and that's what I'm looking to accomplish over the next 5 years. So that is question number 1. We got checked off the list. Vision number 2 is going to be leg workouts. Share your leg workouts that we've been doing over the last 10 years. So pretty much over the last 10 years, I have personally done legs twice per week. Typically I'll do them on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and I like to personally split up my leg days essentially into, I like to hit glutes on both days, except the first leg day I like to hit glutes and quads, and then the second, how much screen time you spending on LinkedIn, bro? Honestly, I just do my connections every day, and yeah, and then I'll like hop in and out maybe like once or twice every day to see if like I have any like messages or anything. But when it comes to my leg workouts, I'll do glutes and quads on Wednesdays, and then I'll do glutes and hammies on Saturdays, and I'll do squats as my main compound lift on Wednesdays, and then deadlifts as my main compound lift on Saturdays typically. So that's kind of how I structure my leg workouts, my leg routines, like week over week. And I've been doing that literally for the past like 10 years, ever since I sort of like started working out basically. So yeah, that pretty much equates to like 1,000 leg days. So yeah, that's typically what's worked best for me. I'll do a main compound, squats, deadlifts, splitting those 2 up if you want to like do 2 leg days per week, and then splitting those up into quads, a quad day, quad focus day, and then like a hamstrings focus day. And then I like to personally predominantly focus at least like on both days, still glutes, and then just splitting up glutes and quads and hammies like on both, separate days. But yeah, that's like personally what's worked for me, focusing on progressive overload, getting enough sleep. Sleep is king out of anything really. It's like, I think I mentioned this before, but if sleep was like a substance that you could take, like supplements are, right, it would be like banned in competitive sport or something, right? So get enough sleep, super important as far as like growth hormone release. So much good benefits come from sleeping. 80, at least 80% of our nights and nights. So yeah, that's really what's worked for me for my leg workouts, is splitting them up 2 times per week over the past 10 years. Glutes and quads focus day, and then a glutes and hammies focus day is what's worked best for me. So yeah, I would say that if you want to grow your legs, just try hitting them a little bit more. but overall, like just focusing on progressive overload and proper rest and recovery, and you got a good setup there to progress from. So, yeah, so we got vision checked off the list. We got leg workouts checked off the list. Number 3 is least favorite body parts currently. So, right now, I would say predominantly, like, what probably dominates on my, like, personal physique is probably upper body. It's probably chest. In lower body, it's probably hamstrings. It's probably glutes and hamstrings. But so, like, my weakness, I would say, like, my weakest point on my personal physique, if, like, I'm trying to, like, become a IFBB pro, like, and get my pro card in that sport in men's physique in that division by 30, then my weakest point on my physique is definitely my shoulders. Like, my shoulders are going to be, like, the body part that I need to bring up the most, because specifically on my upper body, like, my chest it's like the dominant feature, I guess, if you will. So, like, my shoulders are they kind of like take a back seat to that, right? So, like, my waist doesn't typically look as small because of that. So, like, if you were to, like, think about training a certain body part, like, in the gym to make your waist sort of appear smaller, your shoulders are essentially what is going to sort of, like, have that optical illusion where your waist is going to, like, progressively look smaller and smaller, right? Like, if this is your waist down here and these are your shoulders up here, if your shoulders and, like, your width up top isn't as wide, let's say they're, like, your shoulders are kind of an underdeveloped or weak part of your physique, like it is for me, your waist is going to appear wider compared to someone whose shoulders are a little bit more predominant on their physique, right? Assuming you have similar, like, waist measurements, if you will, right? I think my waist is like a 30, something like that, a 30 or a 31 or something. So that's something that I could personally work on. And then just like a quick note is, if you wanted to kind of if you wanted to sort of give this a illusion, I guess is probably the best word, illusion, that your waist is tinier than it appears, then certainly train your shoulders a little bit more, to make your taper. Essentially, this taper is essentially what, kind of appears to be like, to make your waist look smaller. The more your shoulders are wider, the wider your shoulders are, basically, is kind of advice that I would just give. And that's probably the weakest part of my personal physique that I personally would work on and probably need to do more volume on is my shoulders, because naturally just my chest is a little bit more of a dominant muscle. And for most people, it's kind of the case, but not all. But I would say, like, your shoulders are a little bit more of, like, a secondary muscle when it comes to, like, comparing those to your chest. But I've also just really always focused on working my chest. It's, like, always, like, the first day of the week, like, probably everyone's is. So, yeah, that's probably my weakest part of my physique is my shoulders. And it's something that I'm definitely looking to work on over the next 5 years, basically. So, yeah. So we got vision. We've got leg workouts done. We've got least favorite body part or weakest part of my personal physique. And, yeah. We've got Carrie from Germany here checking in. What's up, Carrie? So, yeah. All right. So, we've just got a couple more to go on this Friday. Hope your day is going super well. And, yeah, let's wrap this up a little bit. So, question number 4. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of, like, the deeper side of things, because that's just how I personally am. I like to get a little deep with you guys, so bear with me for a little bit, and then we'll get to the silliness at the very end. It's kind of silly. It's my silliness. So, again, these are actually just questions that you guys asked, so they're not like I guess I'm, like, curating them a little bit to, like, give you the highlights of them, right? But, yeah, they're questions that, like, came from you guys. So, let's get deep a little bit, yeah? So, question number 4 is this. How do you deal with not feeling good enough? How do you feel with not feeling good enough? Let me know. Drop a comment if you want to answer this, or want to answer it. If you're catching on live or if you're catching on the replay, how do we deal with not feeling good enough? So the way that I would probably answer this from personal experience would be So I was listening when I work out, I try and listen to a podcast episode when I'm working out. Some days if there's not any like new podcast episodes that I follow, then I'll just like listen to music and stuff. But ideally, like that's like when I kind of like learn. I'm like learning to throughout my days is like by listening. Like when I'm working out, I'm just trying to like listen to a podcast, like absorb like new information into my brain. I'll do my reading on the treadmill after I do my workout, and then I'll try and listen to a podcast episode like while I'm doing my workout, right? And so I was listening to this one with it was Andy Huberman's podcast, and his podcast is called Huberman Lab. And he had a guest on, his name was Dr. Peter Attia, and they were kind of talking about like longevity, vitality, emotional health. This was like about a month ago. He had this podcast on, and Dr. Peter Attia, he's this physician at Stanford and Johns Hopkins. Basically, he was talking about like his own experience with like emotional health and everything, and I took a really good nugget from what he said on there. So I'll kind of just reference him and reference that podcast episode that, as a good nugget to take to answer this question as far as how to deal with not feeling good enough, right? So he was talking about like his own way of like treating himself properly. Natalie says, I would probably say just literally get over being so hard on yourself and give yourself grace. List the things you do or are doing well, no matter how small. I love that, Natalie. I love that wisdom. I love to hear that. So, in addition to what Natalie said, I would say, this is what Peter Attia said basically. He says, he had to, he was talking about his experience of going to therapy and everything like that, because he was like always been like super hard on himself. Obviously, he like achieved it a lot, over the course of his like career and everything like that. But like, he was always like very hard on himself. And he's basically saying like what he kind of took from his therapy sessions and his experience of going to therapy was, he kind of advised just to talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend, right? And his therapist had him record, anytime he was being hard on himself, like his therapist had him record himself on his little voice note, like make a voice note and say, I love that, Natalie. That's why your name is PD with Nat Personal Development. I love that for anyone interested. That's awesome, Natalie. Thank you, Cece. This is the new Apollo shirt. But all right, I'm gonna stop being distracted. But basically saying like talk to yourself like you would talk to your best friend, right? And anytime he was being hard on himself, he had to get out his phone and record a voice memo and make a voice note and he would be talking to himself, recording himself, talking to himself, but he was sort of like acting like he was talking to his best friend who was being hard on themselves, right? So I thought that was like really, really great advice, right? Like talking to yourself like you would talk to your best friend in this entire world who is being hard on themselves for whatever reason, right? And so I think like over the past month, like that's something that I've personally tried to implement more, is literally just treating myself with more grace and, being my best friend first. If there's ever times when like, that things like this, feelings like this come up. And then also another book that I read last year was actually called 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. And rule number 2 is actually titled Treat Yourself Like You Were Someone You Were Responsible for Helping. And I think that's another good nugget that I like to remind myself of. Is it's very similar to what Dr. Peter Attia said in that podcast episode, as far as like talking to yourself like you're treating yourself like you're your own best friend, right? And it's very similar where Jordan Peterson's basically just saying like treating yourself like let's just say you're someone you're responsible for taking care of or helping. Like maybe you have like kids or something like that and you have to like care for them properly, right? Like maybe they don't know how to act in the best way. They're not old enough, right? They don't have enough experience, or you have like a mentee or something like that you're trying to like mentor or something if you're in your career growth or something like that, right? And just giving yourself more grace. Like, I really think that's just the answer to this, is just like, it's going to be inevitable. Like, you're not going to feel like you're this super all-encompassing, all powerful person, like 24/7 every single day of your entire life, right? Like, there's going to be, it's like ebb and flow, right? And like, giving yourself grace when you come up short, because you're going to come up short. That's inevitable, right? And saying like, okay, I'm a human being, like I'm the most complex person, like complex living thing in this entire universe. You're not going to be perfect. No one is perfect. Like, I would never want to be perfect. And just give yourself more grace, So yeah, I would point to those two like other sources as references as far as like, how to deal with not feeling good enough sometimes. It's really just talking to yourself like you talk to your best friend, and treating your own self like you are someone that you're responsible for taking care of, and giving yourself more grace. So hopefully that helps with that question, whoever asked that. And yeah, so the fifth highlight for this one, I feel like is this like hot button topic on social media lately for whatever reason. But it's this. So it goes, how would you define a high value man? How would you define a high value man? Let's get into this, yeah? So this is what I would say. I'm really into like these deeper questions. I'm really into referencing different things, different sources that I feel like are really cool outlets that you could like listen to or read or do more research on. Because I feel like it gives me more validity, like it credentializes, if that's a word, what I'm saying, like my own words, right? And so we're going to reference out another source to answer this question. So this is how I would define a high value man, or not define it, if you will, basically. So I was listening to this podcast again. This was actually last year. Jason Wilson is, he was a guest on Andy Frisella's Real AF podcast, and high value man uses references. Yeah. I like that. Thank you. Thank you very much. I agree with that. So Jason Wilson, he's basically the founder of this nonprofit youth development organization in Detroit, Michigan. He's wrote 2 books that I have on my book list that I ultimately want to get around to. But those 2 books are called Battle Cry and Cry Like a Man. And he's a pretty big social media person, I don't know if he personally is, but he's got a big following on social media. But basically, like, Jason Wilson was talking about, they were talking about like, how would you define a man? And basically what Jason Wilson said was that you can't define it. Like, you can't define what a man is, because the moment that you define it, then you inherently are already limiting what that means, or what that is to be a man. And so I listened to him say this, and I'm like, I thought it was a little ambiguous, like sort of like this cop-out, right? When he said it. But then I thought about it, and I was like, he started to kind of elaborate, if you will, on his answer and everything, and I like really agreed with his answer to that. And so like I would say like if I were trying to define like what a man is, or like what a high value man is, I'll also say this, which is something that my really, really good friend, my best friend said the other day, and I was like, you know what? I love what you just said. I'm writing this down because I have this reminders note in my phone that I like take notes from if I'm listening to a podcast, or I'm like at mass and I hear something really good, like from scripture, or I am reading or something like that. And this is what she said. She said, I think I was asking her like what she was going to do or something like that. And she goes, I'm just going to do the next right thing. And I'm like, that's so sage. Like, that is so wise. All you can do is the next right thing. I think that's all we can do is the next right thing. the best way that we can, or with the tools that we have, right? So I would say that a high value man is a man that does the next right thing the best way that he can. So I think that's probably how I would define it. You know, Jason Wilson says you can't define it because you limit it the moment you do. If I had to give like sort of a straight out answer to like what a high value man is, I would say that a high value man is a man that does the next right thing to the best of his ability with the tools that he has. And that's all we can do is the next right thing, right? The next immediate right thing that is right in front of you that you can do that would help you progress into becoming more of a high value man is by doing the next right thing that is right in front of you that you can tend to, that you can care for, that you can make right. I think that's what makes a high value man. So, yeah. So, that's all the 5 highlights I want to just go over super quick on this little 30-minute IG Live number 11. And just this last one I'll leave you guys with is a little quickie one. And it goes like this. What was your favorite show when you were a kid? And my favorite show when I was a kid, when I was growing up, was a show on Nickelodeon. Hey Meg, with the waves, with the 4 hand waves. My favorite show on Nickelodeon was Drake and Josh on Nickelodeon, because that was like the best freaking show ever. I think it might be on Hulu or Netflix. I think it's on Hulu because I was watching it like last year. But Drake and Josh was my go-to last year, and it was a fire show. Last year, like when I was catching up on some episodes, when it was like, I don't know, I think it first aired like in, I don't know, early 2000 or like late 2000s or something like that. So yeah, that was a fire show, Drake and Josh. But yeah, that's all I got. That's all I got. I know, I actually saw that they just found Drake. He was missing. LOL. I just found that out last night too. But yeah, that's all I got for today's IG Live. I appreciate you spending some time with me on your Friday. It means the most to me. And I just hope you have a great rest of your Friday. Have a safe Friday night. Have the best weekend ever. And I will catch you guys again next week, okay? Love you always. Peace.